Hey there, I'm going to talk about oiling valves on a trumpet and I'm going to talk about tuning slides. So the first thing is there's a lot of videos that talk about taking this apart and taking this out. And I agree that that's the best way to oil a valve, but I don't want my beginners to do that. I want to tell you why. If you're a beginner and you take it out and put it back in wrong, it won't let the air pass through and you'll be able to think, or you will think, oh no, I can't play trumpet. And that's just not the truth. The trumpet would just be put together wrong. So once you are advanced enough that you can tell when it's the instrument's fault and not yours, I'll teach you how to take the valves out. The other thing you might see on the internet is people that talk about putting oil in from the bottom. Please don't do that. I mean, we all know about gravity. It's just going to drip right back out on your leg the next time you play. So don't do that. The other thing is because gravity puts the dirt down, if there is any dirt on the inside of the valves, it collects there, and oiling from the bottom loosens that, and then it makes your valves stick. So for my beginners, I want you to use the tuning slides to oil. So this tuning slide is connected to the first valve. If you take your oil and you just do 1-2 drops there and 1-2 drops there. Oops, I accidentally got 3. And you notice I'm immediately moving the valve, because if you were to put a blob of lotion on your hand, you wouldn't walk away, you would rub it in. When you add oil to the valves, you rub it in by moving it up and down. And then we'll go to the second valve and we will do the same thing. We'll find the tube connected to the second valve. We'll pull it out, and you can actually see the second valve's great to see what's happening on the inside. You can see the holes moving. So we do 2 drops in each one. If the instrument has been setting for years or is really, really dry, it might take more than 2 drops, but for normal use trumpets, 2 drops is enough. And then for the third valve, we have a couple of options. The main tuning slide, the big one closest to the bell, can get oil down in there. So can the third valve tuning slide. For most people, they're going to think it's easier to go through the main. So we'll take out the main. Careful that you don't force it out and scratch up your bell. It's very close to the bell when it's coming out. And this tube would just go to the mouthpiece receiver and drip. We don't want to put oil there. We're doing the oil in the tube that's connected to third valve. So like a couple of drops there, and once again, working it in. So that is the way that I really want my beginners to oil their valves. If you, however, are still sticking and need more help, touch base with your band director. Do not take out the valves until you're taught separately how to do that. All right, so the next thing we're going to look about is a tuning slide grease. Make sure you have a paper towel. It's greasy, that's why it's called grease. This grease happens to look white. Some of it looks a little more brown. Some of it's in a squeeze-out tube or a chapstick-looking tube. Some of it's in a tub like this. This is just tuning slide grease. So you put a small amount on your finger, just a small amount. This is probably too much, and that's okay. I can wipe off the extra. So I'm going to rub it in all of the parts that are the inside of the trumpet. Now, if you have a intermediate or advanced model trumpet, you might have a lead pipe that's built differently, where one of this is the outside and one is the inside, and that's supposed to reduce any friction to the air as it flows through. Okay, so I've rubbed it in on the part that goes on the inside. If you're ever worried, like which way does this go, the water key goes on the bottom. Now, every brand of trumpet makes these a little different. On this one, it's not even. You can see that this piece is longer than that piece. I'll often see students try to line them both up at once and force it in. That's just going to break it. So the first step is we want to spread it. And just like the oil, we're going to spread it by working it in. And we can definitely see that I had too much because there's a blob of it right around there. So we're going to take the paper towel and wipe that away. It's really not a big deal. And then we'll take out that one, we'll try the other one, twist and push it. If there's any extra, you wipe it away. This spinning it is just the best way to get complete coverage. Then after we have it all spread on each, This one's longer. We get it started first, then we add the second one, and it just real smoothly goes in and out. Now, when I say smoothly, the tuning slides should not be as quick acting as the valves because we don't want it to fall out on accident. So the tuning slide, you should feel like you're pushing it or pulling it some. And this, it should just be like super slick. You shouldn't really feel like it takes effort to push. We'll then do the same thing with the first and the second. Let me tell you, this one only takes a little speck of grease. And finally, the third tuning slide. Now, depending on your make or model, you might have a restricting screw that you have to loosen for this to come out. And depending on a lot of factors, like whether you trigger out your load D or not, you might want to mix this one with grease and oil. I don't teach my beginners that, but more advanced students will probably trigger out. Some band directors teach their beginners to trigger out on the D. So mixing it with grease and oil makes it slick and easier to move. This one is an example of one that's reverse. So this is the outer and this is the inner. So this bottom one would get greased, but this top one wouldn't. And then on the actual trumpet, this is the outer, this is the inner. So you can see here that when this goes on, it's on the outside. So for this, we would grease this part from the removable and this part from the part that's not removable. And that is how we work all of the valves and get them all greased up. If you don't grease your tuning slides, you will get them most likely stuck at some point. It's important that you grease your tuning slide, oil your valves. The slides, depending on how they're moving, you don't want them to get stuck. They may only need grease, a few times a year. The oil, you'll probably want to do that, at least once a week, depending on how often you play. If you're playing for every day in class and every night at home, you might need it like every other day. As you get more advanced, you'll immediately start to realize when they're not as smooth as they could be. But true beginners haven't learned those things yet, so they just need to err on the side of caution because working them dry can damage them. All right, if you have questions, ask your band director.